Gesù ha definito il comando dell'amore.
Jesus defined the commandment of love as mine and new. Love one another as I have loved you. And he gave his life for us. Friendship or kindness towards others is not enough for Jesus. Neither is philanthropy or mere solidarity. It is something active and dynamic. He asks that we no longer live for ourselves, but for others.
Non vivere più per se stessi, ma per gli altri.
In episode 3 of our series, we emphasized Jesus' teaching on love of neighbor, when he makes it clear that the love done to our neighbor, such as feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, taking care of the vulnerable, is in fact done to him. What we will explore in this episode is how Jesus desires that our love is not one-sided. Our love, especially in the community of believers, is also reciprocal or mutual. In the Gospel of John, Jesus tells his followers, "This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Love for one another indicates a love that is more than merely one way. Jesus wants us to live in mutual love for one another so that all will know we are his disciples. Mutual love, then, is an essential element of a spirituality of unity. To love as Jesus has loved us is a formidable task. He loved to the point of feeling abandoned by his Father. He loved to the point of laying down his life for us. In the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 13, we read, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Living out these words of Jesus can seem impossible, but in life we are often presented with opportunities to lay down our life for our neighbor in little ways, like listening with kindness to someone we find annoying, or taking the initiative to wash the dishes when we're tired, driving to a colleague's home to drop off some food when they're ill, being vulnerable, being available, and reaching out. Sometimes there can be an inner prompting to practice this measure of love in a bigger way, and with God's help, it can be done. JP Slee lived this experience when prompted with the idea of donating one of his kidneys.
For this story, I have to introduce you to my friend Anthony. He was living in New Jersey at the time. He had a chronic kidney failure, and so 3 times a week he had to go on for dialysis, which of course made it kind of like hard to go about his regular daily life. And so at one point in time, I was thinking like, hey, maybe I could be a kidney donor to him. But these were kind of like mere thoughts and nothing, I didn't follow up. I didn't talk to anybody about it. And so anyhow, a couple months go by. And at one point in time, I find myself during an Easter retreat. And the first day of the retreat, in order also to prepare myself a little bit, I went in for a visit to the chapel. And out of the blue, this question came back to my mind, like, hey, JP, are you still willing to donate a kidney? And I was kind of like surprised because I hadn't thought about it for months. But at that very moment there, I prayed about it, I thought about it, and I thought, yes, I wanna follow up with that, and I wanna see if that could even eventually be a possibility. Then on the next day of the retreat, one of the young people sharing was Gidget, Anthony's daughter. And so first she shared that during her teenage years, when she, that her mom went through a lot of suffering. She had lupus, she had kidney failure, and that now, many years later, her dad kind of like went through the same situation with the kidney failure. She said, even though we suffer so much as a family, I wouldn't exchange this experience, because recognizing Jesus on the cross in that suffering, she felt that she had come closer to God, and also it had brought the family a lot closer together as well. And she walks off the stage. She comes back, she grabs the mic again, and she says, by the way, just in case anybody is interested in knowing, my dad is O positive. And that came to me as a shock, because I'm also O positive. So I felt that was the only reason that she was sharing that was for me to hear that. And then I understood also that, God had allowed me the day before to make that decision in all peace and freedom, just between he and I at that moment in the chapel. So that was a gift. And then we went ahead. We talked about with some others in the Focolare community. We did some tests for the blood and the tissue. Everything was matching, and then a few months later, we actually had the kidney transplant. Of course, you hear also the consequences are, you can live your life with one kidney. But that was, of course, not on my mind at all. But I felt, it was not just me wanting to do that, but I also felt kind of like that trigger from God, like, hey, if you want, this could be a possibility. So there was kind of like a subtle invitation on his part to make me make that step out of love for him. So that was also in the background here. Of course, Anthony and I, we stayed in the hospital for a few days. I really felt a tremendous joy in my heart, and I felt there was not just not that joy because of I did something, but I felt that joy came from God. That was very powerful and very tangible. It was a gift, a special moment.
In practicing our faith, we Christians can at times be centered on ourselves. Even in our desire for holiness, which is something beautiful and wonderful, we forget that Jesus has commanded us to journey together. Instead, our default behavior towards sanctity tends to be individualistic. Father Pasquale Ferresi, the co-founder of the Focolare Movement, put the challenge before us this way.
Jesus asks that our love not only be a personal love for God, nor only a personal love for our neighbor. For our love cannot reach its fullness until it becomes reciprocal. Jesus says, "Love one another as I have loved you." He wants reciprocal love to be a fundamental aspect of our Christian life. And this is also part of the mystery of going to God together.
Living Jesus' commandment of mutual love in the family sounds natural, but it is also filled with challenges, as we can see from this experience of Ada Alonso when her family lived through the passing of their father.
So my dad he wasn't a patriarch. My mom was the matriarch, but my dad was always there. So he was always like, I don't know, just that good-natured, hardworking dad. If we had anything, we'd go to him and he'd listen. He wasn't a big talker. He was a big listener. That was just there, always there. I think he was in his early 50s. He had his first heart attack. Ever since then, we decided that he would live with one of us. We're 5 in the family, so we all took turns. We wanted to take care of him. I mean, in the beginning, he didn't really like it that much, but he loved being around the babies. He was awesome with the little ones. 2020, COVID had hit. My dad had gone in the hospital in January. Because of his heart attack, he had pre-existing conditions. He told my brother, "I'm not feeling well and I'm gonna go to the hospital and I don't think I'm gonna be coming out of the hospital." We thought that was kind of strange of my dad and we were afraid. So my brother, he would check on him every day since he worked at the hospital, but none of us were able to go because of the COVID protocols. They didn't intubate him right away, but by I think the second night, they decided that that's what he needed. So my brother said that every time he went by to see him, he was able to open his eyes and he was aware, but that he was fading fast. At a certain point, my brother said, "Looks like Dad is not going to make it past tonight." So we all decided we were going to meet at the hospital. And on the way down, my brother was telling me, as we were reminiscing about my dad's life, of certain moments that were difficult for him to overcome. My brother said, "I would like to apologize to Dad," and I think that's why he was a little more estranged. This brother we hardly saw. Actually, all of us were kind of not very involved in each other's lives until this moment because we all had families, we all had, we were busy. So there weren't a lot of moments where that we shared together. So we got to the door of the hospital where my brother was waiting for us, but the guard didn't let us in. My brother had to call the nurse. So at that point, the guard said, okay, one of you can go. And I knew that it had to be my brother so that he could say his piece. So in that moment, I let go, and my brother was able to go in with my other brother to say goodbye. It was a difficult decision, but I felt it was love. It was the most love that I could give my dad and my brother at that moment. Even though I wanted to see him too, I really felt that both of them deserved this moment. I went home with my sister. My brothers called us as they were able to put him on video so we could see that my dad's eyes were open and he was listening. My brother shared how he was able to say his piece and that dad listened and heard, and he wept. He was so happy, and we were all happy that it had happened, and that we all felt that peace and that joy that he felt in doing that. And in that moment, we promised each other that we would never let life get in the way of our relationships like we had in the past. We became more united as brothers and sisters. We've had epic family vacations, we're in group chats, and we're in each other's lives. So that, we feel, was our dad's miracle.
So what do we do to ensure mutual love? All we can do is our part, to be love for our neighbor and give them space to love in return. Or if our neighbor is making room for mutual love, we can be the ones to return that love. This might take patience, perseverance, courage, and sacrifice. Actually, not might. It will. What is essential is that we do our part so that the gift of mutual love, a grace from God, can happen. When mutual love is present and lived among two or more people, it will be possible to understand what we speak about in our next episode, Unity. As always, for more information or to find the Focolare community nearest you, visit focolare.us. Our journey continues.